Look at this position on the board. The material is equal, but black has doubled pawns. So do you think this position is balanced or unbalanced? I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Now I know what most of you must have thought. Since black has doubled pawns, it's definitely a weakness, so the position is definitely unbalanced. White has an advantage over here, right? Is that what you thought of? But well, if you thought of that, then your answer is incorrect, because this position is completely balanced, is completely even. Why? I'll let you know soon. Let's move on to this example. Black here is up in material by 1 point, and now it is white's turn to play. So do you think this position is balanced or it is unbalanced? I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Well, you must be thinking that since black is up in material by 1 point, this is an unbalanced position because black has an advantage over here. Well, you're right, the position is unbalanced, but rather white has an advantage over here. Why? Because white can now play bishop takes g6. The pawn is pinned over here, so cannot capture the bishop. And now the material is equal. So what do you think now? Do you think the position is balanced or unbalanced? Well, the position is still unbalanced despite both of the players being equal in material. And why so? Because white's pieces are very active and putting a lot of pressure on this pawn. Black's knight aren't that on very good squares. White's pawns have already invaded black's territory. They are dominating this position, and plus there are many other factors to analyze which gives white a lot of advantage in the game. So how did I quickly found out that whether a particular position is balanced or unbalanced, and why is it so important? Well, I'm going to answer all of these questions in today's video. So what is a balanced or equal position? So in chess, when neither player has any clear advantage on the board, then that position is called as balanced or equal position. That means both players are equal and both the players have equal chances of winning the game, or at the most they'll draw the game. Okay, now that's simple to understand. But why are we studying about balanced positions today? Why is it so important? Well, it is extremely important to analyze different chess positions on the board, because once you know whether a given position is balanced or unbalanced, you can take important decisions like whether you want to play safe and go for a draw, or you want to go aggressively so that you can win the game. So such critical decisions can only be taken based on the analysis of a given position. So let's say you are playing with the black pieces in this position, and now you're playing against Magnus Carlsen, right? And Magnus Carlsen is one of the strongest chess players in the history of chess, right? So when you're playing such a position and you already have weaknesses, you do not want to go aggressive in such position. You want to play safe, and probably you will be aiming for a draw, right? But let's say if you're playing the same position against some 200 or 300 rated player who hardly knows chess, right? Who has just newly learned chess, then in this position, what will you do? Will you be afraid of these weaknesses? Of course not. You will just go aggressive. You will just activate your bishop, castle your king, get this rook out, and aggressively start attacking your opponent, right? Because you know that your opponent isn't very capable of handling strong attacks. So first thing is that once you analyze a given position, you can take such critical decisions based on whom you are playing against. And second thing is that let's say if you're playing an opponent who is equally strong as you are, then in such a situation, what will you do? Should you go aggressive in this situation or should you play safe? Well, that question will be answered based on whether that given position is balanced or unbalanced. All right. So now I know most of you are thinking how to identify whether a position is balanced or unbalanced. Are there any key parameters to look for? So well, there are 5 important parameters to look at when you are trying to analyze any chess position. Alright. So the first parameter is material equality. Both players should have same amount of material, quality wise and quantity wise. Now what do I mean by quality and quantity? Well, I'll explain you that in detail in some time. The second parameter to look at is the pawn structure. So both players should have similar pawn structure and there should not be any weaknesses such as isolated, doubled or backward pawns. Alright. Third parameter is piece activity. both players' pieces should be similarly active, okay? If one player's pieces are more active than the others, then definitely the players whose pieces are more active will have a clear advantage in the game. Fourth parameter is king safety. Both kings should be equally safe or equally vulnerable. Alright, and the fifth parameter is control of key squares. So both sides should have equal control over important squares and files and diagonals on the board. Alright, so in all of these 5 parameters, if one player is doing good in couple of parameters but not doing so good in the other 3 parameters, then the position might be unbalanced. Okay, now let's understand all of these points with the help of examples. Now look at this position. Let's look at material first. Okay, is there material equality? So if you count the material, it is exactly equal. So quantity wise, it's exactly the same amount of material. Quality wise also, now what do I mean by quality? Well, quality is the power of material. So if I see we have queen versus queen, bishop versus bishop, 2 rooks versus 2 rooks. So the quality of material is also equal. It's not like that we have a rook on the board against a knight and 2 pawns, right? It's not like that. So the quality is also same. Alright, so material wise, both the players are doing equal. Now let's look at the pawn structure. Well, pawn structure, definitely black has weakness because black has doubled pawns, right? But it is important to understand that a weakness is considered a weakness only if a player can target that weakness. So definitely black has double pawns over here, but at present white is in no condition to even attack these pawns, right? Black is doing completely fine over here. So although these double pawns are weaknesses over here, but since white at present is not able to exploit these weaknesses, that is why at present, alright, at present, so I'm not talking about some future part of this game, at present it is balanced, alright, because white is not able to exploit these weaknesses. Alright, now let's look at piece activity. So if I see white's queen is active, black's queen is also active over here, right? White's bishop is on an active diagonal, black's bishop is also on an active diagonal, right? Both the armies are still undeveloped, right? So if I look at the piece activity, it's pretty much similar, right, in both the armies. So piece activity wise, this is equal. If I look at the king safety, both the kings are still uncastled and both the kings are kind of protected. There is no attack on both the kings, so therefore again it's a balanced position. Now let's look at the control of important squares. So white has taken control of the center squares, right? Black has taken control of the center squares, and everything looks pretty much same over here. So again, it's a balanced position. So because on all of these 5 parameters, both the players are doing well, that is why it's a completely balanced position over here. So since you have a weakness over here, if you're playing with the black pieces, you might just want to draw this game, like not play too aggressively because you already have a weakness and you don't want to give your opponent chance to start piling up his pieces against these, and then later you might have a tough time defending all of these. So this particular position is completely balanced, and now you can either choose to play for a draw, or if at all white makes any critical mistakes in the game, then you might decide to play aggressively and go for a win, right? Now let's look at another position. What do you think about this? Before I give you my analysis, I want you to spend 10 seconds on this position, or maybe more if you need more time, and try to find out on your own whether this position is balanced or unbalanced. Your time starts now. So this position is unbalanced. And why did I say so? Let's evaluate this position on all the 5 parameters one by one. So if you look at the material is equal, right? No pieces or pawns have been captured, so it's equal. Fine. Let's look at the pawn structure. Pawn structure of black is pretty solid, right? And so is the pawn structure of white. It's good enough. There are no weaknesses. So again, it's balanced. Let's look at piece activity. Now that's an important point to look at. If I look at the 2 knights of white player, then both the knights are nicely placed controlling the center squares, right? Both the bishops are placed in a very good place where they are again controlling good center squares. The queen and the rook have already formed a battery on this line, right? the other rook is about to come on the d file and take control of this, right? So if I look at white's pieces, they are placed in such a good position, they are placed on such good important squares. Let's look at black's pieces. Well, black's knight is good, this one is good, but this knight hasn't been developed yet, okay? So it's not a nice thing. If I look at both the bishops are stuck behind their own pieces, right? Look at this. This bishop is definitely bad and this bishop is not that good, okay? Although it has this diagonal, but it could have been better placed, right? Look at the queen, it's just stuck, it's still not developed yet, right? So definitely black is lagging behind in development, right? Both the rooks are undeveloped. In white's case, at least one rook is developed and the other is ready to jump over here, right? So all in all, if I look at the piece activity, black is falling behind in development and his pieces are not nicely placed as compared to white's pieces, right? So that means white definitely has an advantage over here when it comes to piece activity. Now let's look at king safety. White's king is castled and is definitely safe over here. Look at black's king. He's still stuck in the center of the board. He still needs to get his knight out and then he'll get a chance to castle, right? So he's still behind in castling. He's still in the center of the board. That means white has an advantage over here when it comes to king's safety. Now what about control of key squares? Well, if you look at, white has taken strong control of the important key squares, which are the center squares. Look at these, all of these pieces coordinating to take a strong control of these center squares, right? Look at black's pieces, one, maybe this, and then there is no other piece or pawn which is helping to take control of these center squares. So black's center control is definitely weak over here. That means white has got advantage when it comes to taking control of important key squares. So since white is ahead in development, white's king is safe and white has got better control over the key central squares. Therefore, white has got a lot of advantage in this normal looking position. Now let's look at another example. What do you think about this? Do you think this position is balanced or unbalanced? I'll give you 10 seconds to think. Well, the position is balanced. Why? Let's look at material. It is equal in terms of quantity as well as quality. Alright. So it is balanced. Pawn structure, no player has a weakness in their pawn structure. Now I know what you're thinking. This pawn is definitely a weakness because it's a backward pawn, right? And we know backward pawns are weaknesses. Definitely, I totally agree with you. But as I said earlier, a weakness is considered a weakness only if you are able to target and exploit it. Since white is doing his best over here, he's targeting with both of his rooks over here, right? So both the rooks are attacking this pawn, but it is well defended by both of these rooks over here as well as the king over here, right? The pawn is well defended. Now there are 3 defenders to this pawn and only 2 attackers to this pawn, right? So in order to create pressure, you need to have more attackers than the number of defenders, right? So since black is defending with 3 of his pieces, you need to have 4 pieces attacking this pawn. Now, but sadly in your case, you just have these 2 rooks who can attack this pawn. You cannot bring a 3rd attacker also to this pawn because how will you get your king over here? The rook is already controlling this file, right? So there is no way you can exploit this position. Therefore, despite black having this e6 pawn as the backward pawn, it is not a weakness because white is not really able to exploit this weakness. Alright, so therefore, pawn structure wise, this position is balanced. Now let's look at the piece activity. All pieces are equally active, right? So it's again balanced. Let's look at the king safety. Both kings are completely safe right now and there is no threat to any of these kings. So again, both players are balanced in this parameter. Now let's look at the control of important squares. Well, black is controlling these center squares. White is also controlling these squares, right? So if you see, it's kind of equal. okay, when it comes to controlling of important squares and files, right? So both players are doing pretty much same when it comes to controlling of important squares and files on the board. So again, it's a balanced position. So this position is completely drawish, okay, unless one player makes a horrible mistake over here, in which case, you know, other player might get an advantage. But if you just consider this position, then it is a completely drawn position. It is completely balanced. Now let's look at this one. The game is still in the opening phase and the material is equal. So what do you think about this position? Is this balanced or unbalanced? Well, the answer is that this position is unbalanced. Why? Let's look at the parameters one by one. Material wise, quality as well as quantity, it is exactly equal, so it is balanced. Pawn structure, no player has any weakness in their pawn structure, so because of that, it's balanced. If I look at piece activity, well, white's pieces have got more space. Look at this, white's knight so nicely developed on the c3 square controlling these important center squares. This knight has already invaded into black's territory and is putting a lot of pressure on all these squares, right? Very strong and active knight white has over here. White's bishop is active on this diagonal. White's queen is enjoying this semi-open file, right? So if I look at white's pieces, they are doing such a better job, right? They are more active. Look at black's pieces. Only the queen is active over here, right? The queen is placed at a good square. But what about the other pieces? This knight is developed to the side of the board, which is pathetic. You know, there is a very popular saying in the chess world that a knight on the rim is grim. So this knight is poorly developed. The bishop doesn't have any squares to develop. The bishop is stuck behind his own pawn chain. This knight is yet to be developed, right? So obviously, considering all of these points, white is doing much better over here. So white has an advantage. Now, if I look at both the kings, this king has lost the right to castle. Definitely not a nice thing for black, right? However, though white's king is still in the middle of the board, but he hasn't lost the right to castle. His bishop can develop over here and the king can easily castle and the white king would be doing fine over here, right? So definitely when it comes to king safety, white's king is in a much better position as compared to black's king. So again, the position is unbalanced because of the king's safety and control of important key squares and diagonals and files. Yes, you can already see white is enjoying a good control of the center squares, right? The semi-open file is available for white over here, right? This diagonal is for the bishop. White is doing so much better over here, right? Because of all of these parameters where white is doing well, definitely white has a lot of advantage in this game. Now let's look at this one. Very interesting position. What do you think about this? Is this balanced or unbalanced? Well, let's check each of the parameters in this given position. So let's first look at the material. So quantity wise, the material is equal because white has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 points of material while black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 plus 3, 11. So both the players have 11 points of material each. So quantity wise, the material is equal. But quality wise, is it equal? Well, what do I mean by quality? So if you notice the difference that white has a rook against black's knight and 2 pawns, right? So the quality of material is different in this situation. But does this make this position unbalanced? Well, no, because right now black is not able to capture any pawn or invade into white's territory. Also, white is not able to invade into black's territory because black's knight is doing a very good job of blocking this d file over here. So because the material is equal, well, the position is balanced, at least in that parameter. Now let's look at the pawn structure. So white has a solid pawn structure on both the sides of the board. Black also has a very good pawn structure, but I know that black has double pawns and we all know that double pawns are weaknesses. But do not forget, a weakness is considered a weakness only if it can be targeted. So since white cannot target this weakness. Therefore, these double pawns aren't a weakness in black's territory. Alright, so therefore the position is balanced when it comes to the pawn structure as well. Now let's look at the piece activity. Black's knight is strongly placed in the center of the board. He's blocking the d file. Very good job. And white's rook is also placed on the open d file, right, ready to invade into black's territory, and is at a square where he's controlling these two important squares where the knight can jump, right? So white's rook also is not allowing black's knight to jump into white's territory. So both the pieces are doing a very good job of blocking each other. So piece activity is kind of same over here. No player has any added advantage in this position. Let's look at the kings. Well, both the kings are relatively safe. So again, equal. And if I look at the control of important squares or diagonals or files, well, white has got good control of center squares. Black also has got good control of center squares. White has the whole file for this rook over here, but it cannot make any use of this file because black's knight is sitting in such a good place that it's blocking this rook over here, not allowing the rook to enter black's territory. So even in this parameter, both the players are doing equally good. So since all the 5 parameters are balanced, are equal, therefore this position is completely balanced. That means the game is completely drawish. If you're enjoying this video, then hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. And now let's move on to the question of the day. So here is a very interesting situation on the board. White has lost a pawn and a knight, whereas black has lost a dark squared bishop and a pawn. But both the players are still in the opening phase of the game. So now you have to tell me in the comments box below whether this given position is balanced or unbalanced. I am eager to read your answers, so quickly type down below. Signing off for now, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.